Kelso Abbey was founded in 1128 by David I and was dedicated to the Virgin Mary and St. John the Evangelist. It was for the monks of Tiron in Picardy, France, whom he transferred to Kelso from Selkirk, where they'd been placed 15 years earlier. The building was completed towards the middle of the 13th century. David and his successors until James V lavished favours on the abbey, and it became one of the richest and most important in the country. The abbots were the superiors of Kelso, Bolton in England, and Riverdon in France, ambassadors and special commissioners for the royal court, as well as the first ecclesiastics on the roll of Parliament. The first abbot was Herbert, who was celebrated for his learning and talent, and was Chamberlain of Scotland. In 1147, he was transferred to the See of Glasgow. Arnold succeeded him, and in 1152, Henry, the Earl of Northumberland, and the only son and heir of David I, died at Roxburgh Castle and was interred in the abbey, although it's unknown exactly where. In 1160, Arnold became Bishop of St Andrews, so that same year John, a canon, became abbot and held the position until his death in around 1178 or 1180. He was the first in Scotland to be granted the right to wear the bishop's mitre. Osbert, who succeeded him, managed to get the Pope to remove his order excommunicating Scotland from the Catholic Church and secured papal favour for the king. In 1208, a dispute arose between Kelso and Melrose abbeys regarding property, and the matter was investigated. Eventually, the king got the issue sorted out. In 1236, the abbot, Herbert, resigned by placing the seal of his office on the altar and retired. In 1243, the abbey was dedicated to the Bishop of St Andrews, and in 1253, the body of the Bishop of St Andrews, David of Burnham, and Lord Chancellor of Scotland, was interred at Kelso Abbey. In 1296, Edward I received notice that the abbot of Kelso submitted to him, and he gave him letters ordering full restitution. Following a treaty between Robert Bruce and Edward III in 1328, Kelso Abbey shared mutual restitutions with English monasteries of property that had changed hands during the Wars of Independence. In 1420, the abbey's right to superiority over all others in Scotland was being contested by the Abbey of St Andrews and brought a formal adjudication before the king. As St Andrews had been the first in Scotland, the abbots of Kelso were forced to resign. In 1460, the young James III was crowned at Kelso Abbey, following the death of his father James II on 3rd August at Roxburgh Castle, due to a cannon explosion. The castle was in English hands at the time, and the Scots had besieged it. They recaptured it soon after. The abbey suffered at the hands of many English forays, the earliest being in 1303 by Edward I, or Edward Longshanks as he was known in Scotland. On the night after the Battle of Flodden in September 1513, an emissary of Alexander Home, 3rd Lord Home, expelled the abbot and took possession of the building. The abbey was pillaged in 1522 by George Talbot, the 4th Earl of Shrewsbury, with the vaults and the chapel or church of St Mary being demolished. The cells and dormitories were razed to the ground, and other parts were unroofed. Unable to get time to repair it, the number of monks diminished, and they were reduced to a state of poverty, skulking in the neighbouring villages. Between 1537 and 1558, James Stuart, the illegitimate son of James V, filled the office of abbot and was the last to bear that title, dying in 1558. In 1542 under Thomas Howard, the Duke of Norfolk, and again in 1545 under Edward Seymour, the Earl of Hertford, the English returned to destroy the abbey, it almost being destroyed by fire. When Hertford attacked, it was defended by 300 men, and it was only entered when their bodies formed a rampart in front of its gates. In 1560, the monks were expelled as a result of the Reformation, and both then and 20 years later, the abbey was stripped of many of its architectural decorations. Its possessions became the property of the Crown and were distributed among royal favourites in 1594. Although the abbey was built around the time of both Melrose and Jedburgh, its style was completely different, as it was styled in the shape of a Greek cross. In 1607, the abbey and its estate were handed over to the absolute control of Robert Kerr, the future Earl of Roxburgh. His ancestors had been commendators or administrators of the abbey since 1507, and it still remains the property of the Dukes of Roxburgh. The abbey was repaired in 1648, as the western part of the nave had been used as a parish church since the Reformation. Above the small church was the vaulted town jail. Around the middle of the 18th century, public worship ceased due to the building being dangerous, and in 1773 the congregation moved to Kelso Old Church and the abbey was abandoned. Several additions were made in that century, but these were ripped down by William Bellenden Kerr, 4th Duke of Roxburgh in 1805, including the church and jail, and the 5th Duke, James Innes Kerr, tore the rest down in 1816, leaving what we see today. The cruciform church has an unusual ground plan, the west end of the cross forming the nave and being shorter than the chancel. The nave and transept extend only 23 feet from the central tower. The remains include most of the tower, nearly the whole of the walls of the south transept, less than half of the western front, with a fragment of the richly moulded and deep-set doorway, the north and west sides of the north transept, and a remnant of the chancel. The predominant feature is the great central tower, which resembles a keep of a Norman castle. Major repairs to the abbey were carried out in 1869 under the auspices of architect Robert Rowan Anderson, and in 1919 it came into state care. In 1933, the Roxburgh Memorial Cloister was built as a mausoleum for the Dukes and Duchesses of Roxburgh. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.